Hi, this is Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Well, just because I can, and I continue with Mass Effect 2 Legendary Edition. Seeing how I have literally nothing on my itinerary other than Arrival, but I want to do it last, I will devote this episode to reading the remaining Codex entries. So if you're not interested in that, you can just skip it, because there's going to be nothing else.
In the early 20s, hovering tanks resembling a cross between an octopus and a giant crab, Praetorians are well-armored killing machines of mysterious origin. Praetorians employ redundant systems from the multiple humans encased within them. Armed with eye-mounted particle beams and capable of attacks at close range, they teleport to evade attack while regenerating their shields. Within hours after death, the organic components of Praetorian corpses disintegrate into a denatured pus, while their mechanisms turn to ash. One specimen, autopsied within minutes of death, reveals a clue. Nanomachines may disintegrate the Praetorians' organic and mechanical components before self-destructing. If correct, this self-rendering hypothesis could account for 3 documented cases of dead Praetorians apparently releasing or becoming clouds of neurotoxic gases, causing suffocating paralysis and nearly instant death. In one remote facility, 17 soldiers died from gas inhalation while assessing the Praetorian. Any personnel in the vicinity of dead Praetorians are urged to protect themselves with breathing apparatus. Reaper indoctrination is an insidious means of corrupting organic minds, reprogramming the brain through physical and psychological conditioning, using electromagnetic fields, infrasonic and ultrasonic noise, and other subliminal methods. The Reaper's resulting control over the limbic system leaves the victim highly susceptible to its suggestions. Organics undergoing indoctrination may complain of headaches and buzzing or ringing in their ears. As time passes, they have feelings of being watched and hallucinations of ghostly presences. Ultimately, the Reaper gains the ability to use the victim's body to amplify its signals, manifesting as alien voices in the mind. Indoctrination can create perfect deep cover agents. The Reaper's suggestions can manipulate victims into betraying friends, trusting enemies, or viewing the Reaper itself with superstitious awe. Should a Reaper subvert a well-placed political or military leader, the resulting chaos can bring down nations. Long-term physical effects of the manipulation are unsustainable. Higher mental functioning decays, ultimately leaving the victim a gibbering animal. Rapid indoctrination is possible, but causes this decay in days or weeks. Slow, patient indoctrination allows the thrall to last for months or years. The flagship of the rogue ex-Spectre, Saren Arterius. Sovereign is a devastating dreadnought of unprecedented power. At 2 kilometers long, Sovereign was believed to have been powered by a gigantic Element Zero core, the only energy source potent enough to land the massive vessel on a planet. During the Eden Prime War, the ship unleashed its peerless destructive force against which Citadel Council ships were defenseless. With a virtually indestructible flagship and a crew of fanatic Geth and Krogan, Saren nearly succeeded in wiping out all his enemies. Only the resourcefulness and bravery of the commander and crew of the SSV Normandy stopped him. The overwhelming power of Sovereign ignited bizarre speculation in tabloid media that the vessel was sent by extragalactic invaders, or was, despite indeterminate photographic evidence at best, a single giant robot. Some sources even claimed that Sovereign was alive. Such conjecture, however baseless, remains to this day.
Now, this is actually a pretty important entry, because it reminds you that this codex is actually an in-universe encyclopedia. It has its own bias. It isn't some all-knowing source of eternal truth or something.
Humans detected Iaea as an Earth-type world via telemetry in 2165. After probe surveys indicated life, lush vegetation, ample fresh water, and breathable air, the Alliance upgraded the planet to a garden world colonization priority. Commanded by Captain Ronald Taylor, the crew of Alliance survey vessel Hugo Gernsback made planetfall on the jungle world in 2173. Soon after, ship transmissions inexplicably stopped. While the precise fate of the Hugo Gernsback command and crew is unknown, they are presumed killed in action and their vessel destroyed. Before the Geth Revolt 300 years ago, the Quarians colonized Haestrom to study the mysterious instability of its sun, which threatened premature eruption into a red giant. As a scientific outpost of minimal military value, Haestrom was ill-equipped to repel Geth forces during the insurrection and fell quickly under their control. Captured Geth planetary survey data indicates that despite sustaining damage during the war, Haestrom's architecture remains as it was 300 years ago, preserving a Quarian architectural style that no longer exists anywhere else in the galaxy. Because Haestrom's sun has overwhelmed the planet's protective magnetosphere, humans foolhardy enough to venture into Geth-controlled Haestrom must exercise extreme caution. Minutes of radiation exposure will overload shields, and hours of exposure will kill. Furthermore, solar output renders surface-to-orbit communication nearly impossible. A typical terminus colony possessing minimal tourist value, Horizon promises substantial economic opportunity, especially in providing new products for humans and supplying the Turian hierarchy. Surveyed 18 years ago, Horizon received pilot habitation 4 years later. The colony proper is now 8 years old. Blessed with verdant forests and abundant fresh water, Horizon maintains a colonial culture that thrives as a refuge from the increasing restrictions of Citadel-governed society. Horizon has attracted numerous dissidents, marginal people, and fringe dwellers from across Alliance space. A regional hub of Asari commerce awash in riches, Ilium is infamous for its abusive labor practices and legalization of nearly everything except murder. As such, Ilium is the preferred production site for weapons and pharmaceuticals that would be illegal nearly everywhere else, made even more lucrative by legal indentured servitude. Among the biotics-related pharmaceutical producers is the Dantius Corporation, a rising star in galactic commerce. Despite the dangers of its products, Ilium is renowned for glamour, luxury, and safety, provided by near-total surveillance, making it a favored tourist destination. Countless celebrities maintain palatial estates on Ilium and in its capital Nos Astra. The sole obstacle to business on Ilium is its extensive bureaucracy, tolerated only for its provision of security. Regardless of the character of its economy, Ilium's self-congratulatory media exalts its own society with the provincial arrogance of new money, glorifying in sexiest CEOs and 10 richest residents lists. Known as the Starcraft Cemetery, Corliss was the regional toxic junkyard for centuries. Ships reaching astronautical near-death at connecting mass relays were sent to Corliss, stripped of every useful component, then dumped planetward to clear shipping lanes. Currently, Corliss hosts numerous merc factions, such as the Blue Suns, rumored to be using downed ship fossils to test advanced munitions. Massive gun batteries threaten anyone attempting planetfall, with minimal defenses against ground attack. Because ancient volcanism greenhoused the planet, Corliss was too hot and CO2 rich to develop a biosphere, despite the abundant lakes that could have sponsored the development of life. Now cool enough for protected habitation, but too scorching for anyone but extremophiles and mercenaries seeking secrecy, Corliss supports numerous Krogan outposts. The Krogan have therefore seeded Corliss with hardy Varen, often kept as warhounds. Varen live primarily on a diet of geophagous vermin and each other. The Drell homeworld of Rakana once teemed with life, its arid plains home to spectacular insect and reptile analogs. But the Drell took to industrialization early, and did not realize the extent of the environmental damage they caused until it was too late. With their topsoil depleted and oceans too acidic to sustain life, Drell were situated for a massive population crash by 2025 CE. It was then the Hanar stepped in, mounting a large-scale rescue operation to bring Drell to the Hanar homeworld, Kajay. As wars erupted over what resources remained on Rakana and billions began to die, approximately 375,000 Drell escaped in the Exodus. To repay their debt, the Drell entered into an agreement with the Hanar. Called the Compact, it states that the Drell would assist the Hanar with tasks the Hanar cannot physically perform. Today, high-ranking Hanar are frequently inseparable from their Drell attendants.
Actually, it's a bit unclear. I assume there are still millions or maybe even billions of Drell actually on Rakana, but it's like a state of constant war, and it's probably pretty difficult to escape the planet with all the advanced infrastructure probably destroyed or whatever.
As vast in natural beauty as it is in threat, the purple and gold nebula called the Perseus Veil forms the natural border between Geth space and the Terminus systems. The Veil's total opacity prevents Council intelligence from surveying Geth activity. Theoretically, the Geth could be preparing a devastating attack against which the Council could be defenseless, or the Geth could have died out, so that the defense budget against them could be gaining the Alliance nothing but economic ruination. Despite fears of Geth, prospectors do occasionally mount salvage ventures inside the Veil. One ended in tragedy. Using techno-mental domination, the Geth drew the team into the Veil before aiming them back as husks at the organic society that produced them. A leaked-classified Spectre report claims that the Dreadnought Sovereign, commanded by ex-Spectre Sarin Arterius and crewed by Geth, hid near the Veil before initiating the 2183 Citadel attack. The Krogan homeworld boasts extreme temperatures, virulent diseases, and vicious predatory fauna. Around 1900 BCE, the Krogan discovered atomic power, promptly instigated many intraplanetary wars, sending Tuchanka into a nuclear winter. With most of their industrial base destroyed, the Krogan entered a new dark age, and warring tribal bands dominated. Populations remained low for the next 2,000 years. First contact with the Solarians made resurgence possible. Krogan brought to less hostile planets bred exponentially and returned to reconquer their home. They built vast underground shelters to shield themselves from surface radiation, which proved prescient during the Krogan rebellions, when many of them isolated themselves in a vain attempt to avoid the genophage. Convinced they could outbreed the genophage, they transmitted it into more than 90% of the sealed bunkers. Today, Tuchanka's population is sharply limited, and while individual Krogan are long-lived, the genophage ensures few replacements.
What? Convinced they could... they isolated themselves in an attempt to avoid the genophage? But they transmitted it into the... So the Krogan? What does that even mean? They built vast underground shelters to shield themselves from surface radiation. Yeah, so the Krogan hid in the bunkers to avoid the genophage, which is sensible, but then convinced they could outbreed it, they transmitted it into more than 90% of the sealed bunkers. What? What do you mean? Why would you do that? That's insane? Because that's something I've been wondering about. What about the Krogan who were off-world? Like, like a large group of them on a... Well, I guess, okay, that doesn't really matter that much, because in the grand scheme of the entire population, however many thousands or even dozens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of them could be off of their major colony worlds and not infected, wouldn't have made that big of a difference probably in the scale of the entire species. But still, I don't understand this. I don't understand what this implies. If it implies what I mean what I think it implies, then it's like colossally dumb.
Asari-made cyclonic barrier technology, CBT, attempts to solve the higher-end limitations of traditional kinetic barriers. Traditional barriers cannot block high-level kinetic energy such as disruptor torpedoes because torpedo mass effect fields add mass. The CBT violently slaps aside rather than halting incoming linear force. By rotationally firing their mass effect field projectors, ships create rapidly oscillating kinetic barriers instead of static ones. Shooting through the CBT is like trying to shoot at a target inside a spinning ball. Significant drawbacks to current CBT configuration prevent its use on anything other than frigates and fighters. Its many high-frequency sensors and emitters require frequent maintenance and replacement. A partially damaged CBT can endanger its operator, who is surrounded by rotating mass effect fields skewing in unpredictable directions. However, if an emitter is damaged, the CBT becomes a traditional shield array, making it effective during opening volleys. The Collector's particle beam weapon is strangely crafted, possessing few moving parts, lacking any obvious means for disassembly, and containing organic parts. The amount of energy required to create a destructive beam is several orders of magnitude more than the energy required to launch a physical projectile at high velocity via a mass effect field. Lacking any clear ammunition or fuel source, the device likely uses heat sinks or compensators to maintain firing during sustained combat. Current Cerberus efforts to understand the technology and replicate it have failed.
Ardatyakshy, Demon of the Night Winds, are Asari suffering from a genetic disorder preventing conventional melding of the nervous systems during mating. Instead, Ardatyakshy chemically ravage their partners' nervous systems, in extreme cases leaving victims as vegetative invalids or corpses. Asari psychologists regard this incapacity for mental fusion as preventing the development of empathy, leading to psychopathy. There is no known cure. The disorder generally begins in infancy, reaching full pathology during maiden adolescent sexual development. While seductive and sexually driven as other Asari, Ardatyakshy are congenitally sterile. Asari mythology has hailed Ardatyakshy as gods of destruction, depicting them as villains of countless legends and as anti-heroes of numerous Asari epics. Contrary to popular beliefs, Ardatyakshy are neither extremely rare, around 1% of Asari dwell on the AY spectrum, nor are they all murderers. Most cultivate and discard countless exploitative and abusive relationships during their legally marginal lives. Despite rumors of Ardatyakshy syndicates, by nature Ardatyakshy are incapable of long-term cooperation. As a disproportionately wealthy species, Asari employ their economic reach and media ownership to hide the Ardatyakshy pathology from the galactic community, placing most Ardatyakshy in monitored program works or seclusion. Only the most aggressive cases are sentenced to sanitaria and prisons or to execution lists of justicars. Asari justicars. Despite the refinement and sophistication of Asari culture, criminality remains a fact of life. The Asari solution to most vicious and destructive criminals is the Justicar order. Justicars are an Asari class of virtually untouchable extrajudicial executioners operating exclusively within Asari territory. In the last decade alone, Justicars have smashed dozens of criminal rings inside Asari territory, operated by Asari and non-Asari alike. Their methods range from subtle where possible to brutal where necessary. Trained for extreme strength, biotic capability, resourcefulness, asceticism and ruthlessness, the fanatical Justicars are romanticized and feared throughout the Asari society. Although Justicars generally work alone, their effectiveness arises from the huge body of knowledge they can access. Any Asari who enters the ranks of the Justicars has already spent centuries in combination of criminal investigation, military intelligence and combat experience. The collective body of Justicar knowledge exceeds even that of the Spectres. Justicars tend to be independent, requiring little help but also scorning it, since such advanced skill and experience usually travels with a powerful ego. The conflicts presented by such arrogance prompted the Justicar Order to develop the Oaths of Subsumation. The Oaths pledge protection of the innocent and the punishment of the guilty, and defense of the common law and the norms of the Asari society. The effects of the Oaths is conservative, ensuring that the Justicars respect the existing distribution of the Asari power rather than staging a coup to rearrange the society according to Justicar satisfaction. Nevertheless, the possibility of such an attack is a source of anxiety and counterintelligence among the Asari elite. Of all of the pledges, the third oath of subsumation is sworn, the least of any of the oaths, requiring a Justicar to swear loyalty that overrides the dictates of even the Justicar Code. The third oath is usually invoked in matters where even black or white thinking of Justicars is forced to concede the existence of grey. To be honest, isn't that kind of nonsensical? Because if they can, if they have specialized oaths to basically suspend their code for a time being, why wouldn't they do it all the time? Like at the point where you can do it, the whole black and white, furiously rigid kind of moral and mental framework kind of breaks down. Collector General. Cerberus xenobiologists believed until recently that the Collectors were coordinated by a biologically active case, similar to other insectoid alien species. New evidence suggests that the Collectors have a singular commander, a so-called Collector General, that has never been seen on the battlefield. Instead, it selects its minions as remote platforms for its consciousness in a process that has been likened to a biological hijack or a cybernetic version of demonic possession. The Collector General can send a secure signal to one of its minions, smoothly taking control of their motor functions, and awaken their previously dormant biotic potential. In a matter of seconds, even the lowliest Collector drone can be upgraded to a battle-hardened biotic commander. If the Collector dies, the General can simply activate and control another body. A post-mortem analysis reveals that this command signal relies on cybernetic implants directly installed in the Collector's cerebellums, but how the technology functions is presently unknown. Coordinating sensory input and motor functions simultaneously with remotely amplifying biotic abilities is beyond the grasp of current human science. Why such an advanced species would be interested in humans is puzzling. More disturbing still, the victims of the Collectors say that the General has spoken to them and has referred to itself by a human name, Harbinger. Drell biology. Drell are an omnivorous reptile-like humanoid with an average lifespan of 85 galactic standard years. They give live birth to their young, who are capable of eating solid food from the moment they are born. Drell appearance is very similar to Asari in humans, but their muscle tissue is slightly denser than that of humans, giving them a wiry strength. Many of their more reptilian features are concealed, like the three-chambered heart with a muscular ridge that is capable of shunting oxygenated or deoxygenated blood as needed. One unique characteristic, however, is their hyoid bone? Hyoid? Whatever. It's a bone in their throats, which allows them to inflate their throats and to produce vocal sounds outside of the human range. Would-be assassins have noted that these two features make the Drell extremely hard to strangle or suffocate. Because the Drell ancestors emerged from an arid, rocky deserts, the humid ocean-covered Hanar homeworld of Kaje proved tolerable only when the Drell stayed inside climate-controlled dome cities. Due to the huge disparity in the two species' homeworld environments, the leading cause of death among the Drell on Kaje is a bacterial lung disease called the Keprel syndrome. Within a generation of the Drell's arrival on the planet, the disease has become resistant to Hanar antibiotics and other advanced treatments. Once an infection settles in, death is slow but imminent. The transplants may buy time, but at the point the infection spreads to other major organs, there comes a point of diminishing return and eventual systems failure. A Drell culture. 8 centuries ago, the already arid Drell homeworld Rakana began its swift descent into lifelessness due to disastrous industrial expansion. Because their population was busting at 11 billion and they did not possess interstellar flight capacity, the Drell would have been doomed without the intervention of the Hanar. Following the first contact, the Hanar spent 10 years transporting 365,000 willing Drell to their own homeworld Kaje. The remaining billions perished in the dying world, warring against each other for diminishing sources of water and food. Today, only a few thousand survive on Rakana, in clusters never exceeding a few hundred. Now a cemetery world, Rakana's population can double during pilgrimage season. Drell have been a part of galactic community for almost 200 years. Most reside on Kaje, content to coexist with the Hanar. Those who leave Kaje tend to be adventurers, gifted by the Hanar with acute perception of interspecies body language. Solitary Drell often seek out new species elsewhere, adapting that species' culture and rarely returning to Kaje. Such Drell number in the thousands and are scattered across the galaxy, tending towards quiet, integrated lives. On Kaje, the Hanar afforded the Drell every opportunity to thrive. While outsiders and even some Hanar regard the Drell as junior partners, if not actual servants, the Drell have integrated themselves into every level of Hanar society as respected, productive citizens. Okay, so apparently only a few thousand of them are left, which seems implausible to me. How would they even effectively kill all 11 billion of themselves? Like, did they literally all starve out? I guess it's technically possible, right? With such a large population, if there's literally no resources left, if the earth is barren and you cannot grow food, and the oceans are all acidic and polluted, and probably the lakes as well and the rivers, so maybe they don't even have water. So maybe they all literally starve out. Because I doubt they could have effectively killed that many people without, even with atomic weapons. I think, at the point where they would go from those 11 billions that far down, I don't think there would have been anyone left. Geth heretics. Conversations with the Geth programs dubbed Legion have brought a light to a profound schism in the Geth society. When Saren Arterius approached the Geth in the Dreadnought Sovereign, some of them chose to follow him, most did not. Saren followers were allowed to leave Geth society but were dubbed heretics by those who remained. The revelation implies several things. First, the majority of Geth choose not to attack organic society. Second, the Geth forces and the Council of Fleets have battled the Council and the Alliance fleets have battled the last 2 years, represent only a small portion of their actual military and economic power, perhaps as little as 5% of mainstream Geth society. Third, the schism suggests individual Geth possess more free will and perhaps more personality than previously suspected. Without such individuality, no Geth could have deviated from the group decision to join or reject Saren's mission. There could not have been a division. Finally, there is a matter of Legion's word choice. The Geth used the English word heretics to describe Saren's followers. Of the many words Legion could have chosen, nonconformists, dissenters, rebels, only the word heretic suggests a broadly accepted Geth philosophy or religion, and that the action of Saren's allies violated the orthodoxy. Krogan Blood Rage. Feared throughout the galaxy as nightmarishly violent warriors, the Krogans are both aided and hobbled by their legendary blood rage. In the grip of the madness, Krogan becomes seemingly invincible, but are merely totally unresponsive to pain. Blood-enraged Krogan fight regardless of injury level, to the extent that Krogan shorn of all 4 limbs continue gnashing past brain death until total somatic death. The supremely resilient, hyper-violent blood rage is a synergy of 2 aspects of Krogan neurology. The first aspect is a positive feedback loop in which adrenaline, also activated by fear or rage, suppresses serotonin, the brain chemical that induces serenity. The second is the overdeveloped Krogan limbic system. In Krogans, as in humans, the fear or rage shifts mental control from the frontal lobes, responsible for reasoning, to the limbic system, responsible for aggression and survival. During that shift, Krogan and humans exhibit diminished capacity for logic and self-control. Prior to the ecological devastation of Tuchanka, blood rage was extremely rare amongst the Krogan. Back then, while all the Krogan were capable of heightened anger and violence in fight-or-flight scenarios, almost none experienced the insensitivity to pain. The 1% who did were those suffering serotonin suppression. At that time, Krogan society regarded the condition as pathological and medicated or imprisoned sufferers to protect them and society. Following the nuclear ecocide 4 millennia ago, evolution selected only those Krogan afflicted with the blood rage for survival. Today, there is no living memory among the Krogan of a life without mindless, murderous fury. Okay, so I guess that is literally what Grant is experiencing, is literally what all Krogan are experiencing. Which, by the way, makes me respect Rex even more. Rex is pretty cool already, but the way he must disregard all of those violent thoughts in his head that tell him that, you know, dying aliens are such a cool thing, and instead to chill out and actually plan out his policies and whatnot. That's very impressive. Rex is a totally cool guy. Husks Science. The exact fate of species captured by the collectors is unclear. The humanoid appearance of Science gives ghastly clues. The Science frame and skull are similar to those of human or Asari, but the bone structure is overlaid with metallic resin. Posthumous examination of their bodies reveals a skin tone resembling that of Reaper husks, but their transformation process seems more extensive. Like husks, they are cybernetically modified on a nanoscale level, so that they can operate even in hard vacuum. Hoses rather than veins and muscle tissue join the major portions of the body together. One arm is replaced with a construct that fits a large rifle, turning the creature into a humanoid weapon platform, and a fleshy sack is supported by the creature's back and head. The sacks contain the brain matter and the spinal tissue, too much to have come from just one victim. This indicates Science are an amalgam of individuals, with one primary victim providing the frame, and several secondaries providing the flesh for a decentralized semi-mechanical nervous system. This decentralization makes them highly resistant to gunshot wounds. Even a headshot is not a certain kill. The Science weapon, however, indicates that the Science retain some living tissue and sustain some of the same electrochemical reaction as those of a human biotic. The weapon creates powerful warp effects, which is consistent with the ESO nodules visible in the Science extensive neurons expansive nervous system. Given the rarity of human biotics, it seems likely that these Dust-form isonodules are deposited during their transformation, rather than requiring a biotic victim in the first place. Arrival, the Reaper's secrets. Planet Aratoth. Nothing is impossible, says the hegemony propaganda poster that depicts a muscular Batarian miner under the Aratoth sky, his rebreather held away from his face as if he just taken it off. The image sums up millions of man-hours of labor on the Batarian planet and represents, or misrepresents, much of its history. 2 decades ago, Aratoth, like several planets in the Skyllian Verge, was claimed by both humans and the Batarian government, but the Alliance backed out after learning about the atmosphere's dangerously low pressure and oxygen levels. Instead, they concentrated their colonial efforts on planets that could support human life without an aid of domed habitats and rebreathers. Human governments saw it as a wise move, the Batarians saw it as cowardly. The Batarians rose to the colonization challenge, shipping in large number of laborers. They took high financial costs and casualties due to accidents and logistical snafus in stride. Large-scale dumping of cyanobacteria has increased the oxygen in the atmosphere by a fraction of 1%, a modest increase that the hegemony trumps as a sign of their eventual victory. Short-term profits on Aratoth are largely made in the mineral sector throughout the mining, through mining the extremely mineral-rich planetary crust. The dark side to the mining does not appear on the propaganda poster. The majority of laborers are indentured servants or slaves. Aratoth is rumored to have a military base on its surface and throughout its solar system, though details are heavily restricted by the hegemony's Ministry of Information Control. Human merchant ships rarely come to the planet, outcompeted by local companies that benefit from heavy economic protections. The average Aratoth citizen only sees humans on the news, usually featured in stories of trials and executions of accused spies. The flotilla, or the migrant fleet, is a fleet of roughly 50,000 starships that houses over 17 million Quarians, the largest collection of spacefaring vessels in the galaxy. The fleet is so large that it may take days for all of the ships to pass through a mass relay. The ships are constantly repaired, replaced, and upgraded to comfortably house as many Quarians as possible. Typically, each ship specializes in roles for the fleet, from enormous agricultural live ships to the shielded lab ships, to the repurposed freighters known as home ships that house Quarian children, young parents, and educators. Employed Quarians typically live on the ship they work on, since commuting from ship to ship ties up resources with unnecessary docking procedures. Even within the flotilla, Quarians on most ships will remain encased in their protective suits. Rarely, Quarians will meet on clean ships for specific purposes such as medical services or reproduction. When this occurs, they will remove their suits, knowing full well that it is likely that they will spend a few days having allergic reactions or getting over infections that their weakened immune systems compensate for each other's presence. Shadow Games, the Broker's Secrets. The Yag are a race of massive apex predators from the world of Parnak, whose rise to sentience is in no way blunted their violent nature. A group of Yag is unable to cooperate until a single reader has been determined throughout either social maneuvering or brutal force, but no grudges are held under once a Yag establishes dominance. Former rivals serve their new superior's purpose with unflinching loyalty and relentless determination, a legacy of their origin as a pack species. Their 8 eyes are another sign of their hunter ancestry. All 4 pairs are geared towards tracking and predicting the movements of prey. Sophisticated and keenly developed sensitivity to movement and light have made Yag masters of reading body language, regardless of species, much to their short-lived chagrin. The Council's first contact teams discovered it was nearly impossible to lie to the Yag. The Yag technology is equivalent to the 20th century Earth standards when they were discovered by the Yag had technology equivalent to the 20th century Earth standard when they were discovered by the Council in 2125. The Council's ambassadors approached the Yag as friends and allies instead of subordinates, a baffling sign of contempt from newcomers on Parnac. The Yag attacked when it became apparent that the alien diplomats stubbornly considered themselves sovereign people instead of new underlings. Parnac remains off limits by the orders of the Council, which fears the Yag's size, aggression, and obsession with control makes them poorly suited for integration into the galactic community. Helios Thruster Module. Intended for a next-generation fighter craft, the Heat Industries Helios Thruster Module propulsion system far outpaces typical hydrogen liquid oxygen reactors that power a frigate's maneuvering thrusters. By using metastable metallic hydrogen, the Helios boast a fuel that can burn at far greater efficiency than liquid H2O2. Navigators can execute numerous small course corrections inherent to any long-distance travel without fear of exhausting their ship's fuel supplies. The next gain extends to forward impulse as well. A ship powered by antiprotons can coast temporarily using Helios to reach an inferior but highly sustainable speed. Such efficiency lowers antiproton consumption, a constant concern for any warship. When a Helios-propelled ship must refuel, however, it typically relies on large carrier or nearby planetary factory to synthesize the metallic hydrogen. The process uses extremely dense mass effect fields to create a metal under pressures of over 1 million Earth atmospheres, an activity most safely done while planet-side. While this process may seem like a drawback compared to skimmer ships that can gather combat superiority, that can gather hydrogen and oxygen from anywhere in the universe, the combat superiority of the Helios's maneuvering capabilities is often a worthwhile trade-off. The same efficiency that allows for a microburn course correction can power rapid bursts of motion. Once a pilot becomes used to the new ship's energetic responses, she can easily put the ship wherever and at whatever angle she desires. Starships, Quarian life ships. There are few wide open spaces in the Quarian spacecrafts. Life ships are the exception. Each life ship is a massive hydroponics facility, growing thousands of tons of genetically modified staple crops under artificial lights in a highly enriched soil. The surface of life ship is studded with docking bays, so as many shuttles as possible can distribute the food throughout the flotilla on daily basis. When received, the crops are sterilized with radiation, ground up into nutritious pastes, and pumped into the Quarian suits through feeding tubes. In return, waste products that could be used as fertilizer or compost are returned to the life ships through an efficient, if odorous, recycling program. Life ships do not hold animals. The Quarians consume a vegan diet, driven not by ethics but by practicality. Captive animals require living space and consume large amounts of water and plant matter. The Quarians cannot afford such an inefficient resource-to-calorie ratio, to say nothing of a live animal's disease or allergen potential. As a result, when the flotilla arrives in a star system where life is based on the same dextroamino acids that the Quarians consume, pastes based on animal protein fetch highly inflated prices, and the vendors are typically mobbed by Quarians wanting a new taste sensation. The sickness that often follows these binges is treated as much the same way as hangover is in the human culture, painful but part of the overall experience of excess. Okay, this is pretty interesting, how they are all vegans by necessity, and I can totally understand that because, it has been scientifically proven, actually, that, holding animals for food especially cows, is one of the most ecologically damaging and activities on the planet. Like when they are cutting down those rainforests in the Amazon, they are partially doing it for wood, but most of that space is being cleared for things like pastures and stuff. In fact, there is a possibility that in the not so far future we are all going to be eating bugs, because again, it has been proven mathematically this time that when it comes to the number of resources spent per grams of protein, bugs are actually much more efficient a source of protein than pigs or cows. The Master Thief, KASUMI'S secrets. Casa Fabrication Locust, the gun that killed 2 presidents, is the infamous legacy of the Casa Fabrication Model 12 Locust, originally created for the Systems Alliance, who wanted a lightweight weapon for high-gravity worlds. The Locust was designed to overcome the limitations of a traditional submachine guns at long range. With bullet velocity of modern weapons already pushed to the limit, the Locust designers sought a way to improve accuracy through reducing weapon kick. They created an internal floating bed that absorbs the gun's recoil, with minimal jarring on the gun frame itself. The barrel, magazine and chamber and operating mechanisms all move within the bed, which absorbs shock with springs and buffers. This creates a platform stable enough for the Locust so that it can use auto-targeting software, usually reserved for much great weapons. The Locust's lethality on shielded target has been amply demonstrated. In 2176, a Virginian patent clerk named Michael Moser Lang brought a Locust concealed into a shoulder-mounted video camera to a photo opportunity between Enrique Aguilar, the President of the United North American States, and Chinese People's Federation's Premier, Jin Yong. At a distance of about 25 meters, Lang pierced the kinetic barrier covering the stage with the first burst, and when Jiang heroically tackled Aguilar to remove him from the line of fire, Lang's succeeding bursts went through the Premier's body and fatally wounded both men. Donovan's Hawk collection contains 2 antique ivory-handled Locusts, modified to take thermal clips. A detachable data drive suggests it rests in the lining of the box, containing Omni tool specifications to fabricate copies. A quick trip to the extranet reveals that one of the weapons has the exact serial number as Lang's original. If it is a fake, it is an extremely well-made one. Lady Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was a target of several terrorist attacks over its 210-year lifetime, but in 2096, a motley group called the Freedom First finally brought the statue down. Protesting the induction of Canada and Mexico into the United North American States, the New York chapter of Freedom First wanted a symbol that they would secede from this new union if necessary. In the early morning hours of November the 1st, they smuggled small arms and 15.5 tons of high explosives onto Liberty Island. Shooting or capturing the guards, they planted the explosives under the pedestal and detonated them at 7:37 a.m. The statue crashed into the ground in pieces, unexpectedly killing 4 of the Freedom First terrorists. The remaining team members were apprehended after long manhunts, but the damage was done. The outrage the secessionists kindled the fires of a second American Civil War. On November the 4th, President Caitlin Chung signed an executive order to rebuild the statue. Approximately 1/10 of the steel beams and copper plating from the destroyed statue were recovered and used in creating a new one. The original's head was put on display in the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. It remained there for 2 years until the Battle of Washington. During heavy shelling by secessionist forces, the head disappeared. A new statue was completed in 2101, and the fate of the original pieces was well left for speculation and pulp novels. Interest flared up briefly in 2159 when photos surfaced of the head in the cargo of a star freighter, but by the time the human media was far more concerned with the future. In the face of humanity spreading out among the planets, a statue titled Liberty Enlightening the World seemed small and quaint by comparison. Okay, this is perhaps one of the most interesting entries in the Codex so far, at least to me, because it tells you quite a lot about the situation on Earth, which is something that I always wanted to learn more about. For example, it tells you that Mexico, Canada, and the US are a single country now, called the United North American States. But there was also a second American Civil War, which I assume, well, I don't assume, it's evident from the fact that United North American States are still a thing, that the supporters of that idea won, rather than the ones that wanted to actually keep the countries separate. But this is pretty interesting. I'm glad that I read that. And that concludes the Codex, so that also concludes this episode. Normal gameplay will resume from next time, but for now, that's all for this one, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!